So, hello from Lake Garda. I found a lovely little place to sit and have a chat with you. Isn't it amazing to think it took us 25 years to buy a place and settle down here? Imagine all the money we could have saved. All those moves were expensive. But then what is experience worth? The type that changes you from the inside out. I think it was Oscar Wilde who said experience is the name people give to their mistakes. Well, Malta was a mistake. That's true. And Bucharest certainly wasn't my cup of tea. But then it was interesting to see the Eastern Europeans, fighting for their freedoms, thanks to the EU before it was taken over by the globalists. But I did see them fighting for it, as my former home appeared to be losing so many of their own liberties. So, I kind of felt backwards. But then if we'd lived in Bucharest first, then Prague, Amsterdam, Paris, and ended up in Rome, I would perceive everything quite differently. Well, we're here. We're settled, and it feels safe and secure up here, up north. Rome is forever our favorite city, and we go back every 2 years-ish. But I'm not sure I'd want to live there now. In fact, I wouldn't want to live in any of the cities. I'm no longer a snob. As I get into 62 this month, I've managed to shed some of my worst traits. Not all, but I am who I am. And I am a product of the places in which I've lived. But I do miss the reference points of my former home. I mean, no one here will laugh when I say, Marcia, Marcia, Marcia. I wonder what it'd be like to live in America now. I don't know, but I'm glad I grew up in Magnolia, a lovely little village nestled up against the city of Seattle. My parents bought it from a woman named... Oh, there's a bee. My parents bought it in 65 from a woman named Ruth Prince. And she was quite a television personality in the 50s. I think they bought it from her in 65, yeah. But it was amazing. So Ruth Prince, she was this television personality, and she used to dress up in a Harlequin outfit and sit on this oriental carpet and read stories to little children. So I have my own little oriental carpet that's been with me in all the cities in which I've lived. I call it my little flying carpet. And that's why I like to read to you. So hey, today, what am I going to read? I'm going to read from Bucharest. Why not, right? Actually, it was kind of a sad time, because living here, I always think of Colette. Colette and Godot were our first papillons. But this is chapter 31, my book, A European Odyssey, How a Boxer's Daughter Found Grace. Lots and lots of little stories, short stories about lots of places. So this one is called Another Peaceful Pilgrimage. It was at that time that Colette started having seizures. She was now 15 years old, and her Venetian face was turning gray. Colette had been with me every step of the way throughout my odyssey. She died on Good Friday, and it broke my heart. Mother used to stare at her and say, I just think she's too perfect to paint. It was easy to meditate on Colette. The first day I brought her home, I was told to keep her in the kennel at night. I lay on my side, and we stared at one another until I took her out and put her on my bed. And for the next 15 years, she slept on a little pillow above my head. She watched my every move whenever we were in the same room. When Francis and I got married, we decided to get a dog. After Colette, we decided to get another one. Godot came along the following year. My research took me to a breeder in Vancouver, Washington, located 3 hours south of Seattle. I discovered later on this is the same small town where my biological daughter, Heidi, was adopted by the preacher and his wife. This wasn't the only coincidence. Colette weighed the same as my daughter did at birth, 4 pounds, 9 ounces. I didn't know it then, but the moment I saw Colette peeking out from behind the couch, looking so shy, perhaps abused as a puppy, I knew she was the one. In her final week, she went both blind and deaf. As with Muv, everything happened quite quickly. for which I was grateful. That didn't stop her from slipping outside her little round bed to sniff me out until she found me at my desk. Colette had followed my entire life with her eyes and her heart, but then she stopped eating. Neither of us wanted to experience another grand seizure. She was telling me it was time to go. The Romanian vet came to our house, and she died quietly in my arms. Francis and I drove out to the countryside to find the perfect spot for such a little creature, a special little creature. We drove around windy roads and astounding views. We passed dozens of little wooden churches resembling petite A-frames strewn across the mountain roads. Each of these was ridden with religious icons tucked inside their tiny churches called troitas. Whenever a faithful Romanian passed a troita, they instantly made the sign of a cross in midair. This made me smile knowing Colette received prayers throughout the day. We buried her in a place with a beautiful view overlooking Lake Vidraru in the shadow of the Fagaras Mountains. There was a waterfall nearby. It was peaceful and perfectly suited for the unbearable lightness of being Colette. In the end, she weighed next to nothing, and we could easily imagine her floating up to the stars. Colette could do her pirouettes and entertain them with a face like a Venetian mask, a face far too pretty to paint. When I let her go, it felt like a sign to set off on another pilgrimage. We had driven through Transylvania and cruised through the Carpathian Mountains, so the time was ripe for another kind of pilgrimage, taken by car. I can't recall if it was Florin, Doran, or Sorin, but one of them told me about these two mountain roads situated between the highest peaks in the country. Two highly atmospheric roads, rarely open to the public. One of the barely paved roads is called Transfagarasan, and the other is called Transalpina. The car show Top Gear drove their Ferraris along this crazy maze and giggled the entire time. These two roads created a strange labyrinth of spiraling roads without railings, a roller coaster of a trip, making the driver giggle or feel like he was driving on the edge of the earth. They sat along the southern section of the Carpathian Mountains and were constructed in the 70s, during the reign of Nicolae Ceausescu. He wanted to ensure quick military access across the mountains in case of a Soviet invasion. They weren't the only roads, but these passes took the driver through river valleys, creating a highly dramatic tour. When viewed from the air, these roads appeared almost as bizarre and disoriented as when driving right on top of them. They are windy, dotted with steep hairpin turns, long S-curves, and sharp descents. I got an old rental car, put Godot in the passenger seat, and felt confident for no other reason that Godot had arrived and Colette was now gone. Estimated time was under 3 hours for each road. I made a reservation to stay overnight in Sibiu, a town with a German mayor situated in between the two roads, assuming a break would be necessary. For long stretches, I never saw another car. Then I noticed a cluster of shacks in the trees, with a more modern building located closer to the road, with bold letters, 3 feet high, streaked across the front, Tessera Alex. Alexandru was a common name in the country, but I read it as if Muv had come along for the ride, and that felt wonderful. It was an unforgettable experience because the isolating effect was surreal and the scenery spectacular. It was the kind of pilgrimage that would inspire the future. So hey, ciao for now. Check out my podcasts and photos and essays and where you can buy my books, which have great reviews, on baileyalexander.com. Arrivederci. She's still in the water, isn't that wonderful?